to just say, okay, we have zero chance of resolving this politically. I'm just going to take money and just build the wall out of, for example, the military budget. If he does that, is he within his rights? And if he's not, what happens?
Well, first of all, there are a number, last count, over 24 statutes or laws in which Congress has delegated to the president or given the president permission to spend discretionary funds in department budgets in the case of an emergency. It's sort of like when Hurricane Harvey hit Houston. What happens is the president declares an emergency, which frees up money and his ability to direct the money from FEMA. It's usually not enough, so the lawmakers go back and pass a supplemental bill to fully fund the relief efforts, which is what happened with Hurricane Harvey and happens in other areas. So the question isn't really, has Congress already given the president under certain circumstances, which include, by the way, border security and drug trafficking portals on the southern border, including the right to have the military take action in shooting construction projects and add border barriers to the southern border to block drug trafficking lanes. So those are already codified in law. Mm-hmm. The question really is there money, discretionary money, to fully build the barrier, or would he just be able to get it started and do targeted in certain areas completion and then still have to get additional money to finish it? So I think that's why he directed all his department heads and cabinet members to scour the discretionary budgets of their departments to see if there's any way he can lawfully apply funds to building the border barrier. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not a budget expert. I'm more of a constitutional separation of powers guy. Mm-hmm. But I don't think there's funds available under his emergency powers to basically bypass Congress by declaring an emergency and just build the entire border barrier that he wants. I think he'd have to come back to the table at some point to finish the project and get Congress approval at some point.
Is the phrase national emergency, is that something that is open to debate given this situation?
Well, it's certainly open to debate. The question is who resolves it, who settles the debate. And if we learned one thing from the travel ban case, this idea that courts are going to look behind the President of the United States' determination that certain countries are dangerous and we shouldn't allow people to travel because of their documentation and their record keeping. Courts consistently held, lower courts and the Ninth Circuit consistently held, that's not a valid reason. They've been traveling there for years, and only 6 people have got in that they're on the watch list. And the Supreme Court settled that debate and said, when the person that has access to classified briefings and the CIA and the Department of Justice and the FBI and the military tell us that there's a national security problem based on that information, so he needs to halt travel temporarily from 7 countries. It's not the job of courts to say, we understand your concerns, Mr. President, but we don't really think that's an emergency, or we don't really think that's dangerous.
Right.
So whether or not he legally has the authority will be a statutory construction, which is what courts do. But whether or not it really is an emergency is not what courts do. That's the president's job. And in fact, you've got 2 branches of Congress that have already weighed in. Congress has said the president should do it. So you've got both elected branches. The president determines what an emergency is. It would take a third unelected branch to come in and second guess what the president thinks rises to the level of an emergency.
Right. No, dead on. Absolutely. But you and I both know that what's going to happen, that if he does declare this, and he's instructed his cabinet to look for discretionary income, and you're right. I mean, if they've got $5.7 billion hanging around, then that's an entirely different problem. But the Democrats will judge shop. They'll go to a district judge in California, knowing it's going to go to the Ninth Circuit, and then they'll just slow walk it. And who knows if it ever does get to the Supreme Court and whether or not they'll take it up. You're right. You're dead on all of that. So it seems like we're locked in the middle of this giant urinating contest on either side. And I know you're a constitutional expert and you're a lawyer by trade, but I don't see a pathway out of this for either side to get what they want. Man, if you were shepherding this thing, what would you be doing?
Well, I can certainly envision a situation where this gets locked up in the courts. But I think the Supreme Court has telegraphed how it might end if the question is whether or not this qualifies as a national emergency. The other thing I would say is that I think there's a compromise here a little bit on a broader immigration standpoint for political reasons, but it boggles my mind that Democrats and Republicans in Congress and both parties have both funded and built border barriers over the last 20 years. Yeah. So we had Clinton, Bush, and Obama all built border barriers. Both Congresses of both parties and presidents of both parties have requested, received, and built border barriers, and there's 654 miles of barriers on the southern border already. Yeah. So to me, the idea that barriers are immoral or that they're impractical or that we don't believe in them, that ship has sailed. And so I believe from a political standpoint, the idea that we don't need any barriers on the border is going to be a loser over time politically for the left. But I also think that just simply saying we're not going to run the government or fund the government or continue to govern because we can't build a barrier is going to be problematic for Republicans too, because, this is the art of compromise, right? That's what governing is. And so either side could be charged with not coming to the table, but the president has offered a global immigration compromise in return for building the border barriers, which I think that is something that the left should jump at because it means getting past all these immigration problems and reforming the system and taking care of security. So that would be ultimately my optimistic, idealistic view of it is eventually they're going to get together and fix the immigration system and problem at the border, together as opposed to unilaterally. But until then, I believe Trump has the will and the authority to take this problem on his own. And it seems to me like by going down there and the things he's doing is just checking boxes so he can do it.
Yeah, Byron Henry's our guest, constitutional expert. Look, Byron, this is not self-deprecating. I'm not as educated or as learned as you are. But I do think just a view here from the Midwest, it appears that since 2016, since the election, everything from the Democrats is Trump bad, stop Trump bad, Russia, Trump, stop Trump. There's been nothing pushed forward besides that. On the other hand, you got Trump, and if he caves on this or appears to cave on this, he's finished. He's not going to get reelected in 2020, and I tend to agree with what Lindsey Graham said on television a couple of nights ago. It probably will be the undoing of the Republican Party as we know it. So the stakes are high on both ends. There seems to be that compromise there that you were alluding to, where they can actually get something done with the Dreamers and take care of DACA once and for all. But I just sense that neither side wants the other side to win, and what we've got here is a very real problem for a lot of people, and it's all politics. And to someone that's just maybe like you too, I'm sitting there saying, what is this all about? These two things should not be intertwined. They should be mutually exclusive. I just don't know what happens if one side blinks first. It probably will be the undoing of that one side. I don't think either side wants to take that chance, at least right now. What about you?
I don't think they want to take that chance either. I can tell you that while I agree that there's a lot of blame to be thrown around on both sides, I can tell you that the Republicans are much less interested in the Democrats getting a partial victory, as they've offered to, than the Democrats are in assuring President Trump gets no victory, because we know that the Democrats have supported wall funding and wall building in the past, and now all of a sudden they are absolutely 100% opposed to it as immoral, impractical, and they will not fund more than 99 cents for a link for a chain link fence on the border. And so we know that has to be based on something other than an actual belief that you shouldn't be building a fence, since we've been doing it for a while. So I suspect it has to do with isolating and crippling President Trump for 2020.
Yeah, I do.
That's the big deal.
They think the election in 2016 was stolen from them. And so because of that, they want to make sure it doesn't happen in 2020 again. The one thing that Trump has had going for him, over and above everything else that benefits all Americans, is the way the economy is going. So that the end game for them may be, well, the longer this goes on, the worse it's going to be, even though they have people like Chuck Schumer and Hillary Clinton and former President Obama on tape saying that they supported this and they funded it and all that. Even though that's on tape, I just think that this is one giant ploy to turn 2020 upside down. And Byron, let me ask you a question. Because you're a smart guy, you can't predict the future. Nobody can. But do you see this thing as just going off the rails completely, and in 6 or 8 months, we've got the same thing we're talking about, and maybe the market plummets, and maybe the 800,000 people that aren't getting paid now, they're only missing, they're going to miss one check, and that'll be today. Do you see this thing as something that goes on long and long and long, or do you sense that maybe this is just nothing more than a 30-day tempest in a teapot?
It's a big deal, but these big deals tend to have steep crescendo curves, meaning they go along, something occurs in the public or in the media or one of the parties, and then it either goes steep up towards pressure to get it resolved, or the other one party feels like there's no need to come to the table. And so my view is that it will increase exponentially after today or after tomorrow, the check issue, the federal pays, it will increase exponentially, ensuring that one party is going to have to blink. Now, they'll claim they did. They'll try to save face, and if the other party is smart, they'll allow them something so that they can save face, whether it's the Democrats to President Trump or vice versa. But I think that will occur, and it will probably occur in the next couple of weeks. My guess is this will not get to the next round of paychecks before it's resolved in some form or fashion.
Yeah. Byron Henry, constitutional expert. Byron, always great having you on here. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.